So hi there, my name's Nicola. I'm one of the co-founding directors at Flourish Together, and we are running today's workshops on looking at income generation strategies and also on prioritising and getting started and putting your plans in place so that you can make them manageable. Those are the two sessions that we're covering through this workshop set. So I'm just wanting to welcome everybody in. This is both a listen again session for people on our Time to Grow programme and for anyone else who's joining us on this. So one of the things when people are running social enterprises, charities and developing projects, a challenge that's never ending really is making sure that income flows through, making sure that you're earning what you need to earn, that the organisation plan or project that you're running is financially viable. And this session really is hopefully going to help you think about what the cocktail needs to look like, the different ways and the different methods, but also thinking about what's appropriate, what's relevant for your organisation, but also there's more than one way to skin a cat, and putting all your eggs in one basket, and you'll see what I mean in a moment, might not be helping you in terms of your thinking, in terms of how you need to market yourself, who you need to be in touch with, and how you need to perhaps manage time and prioritise in terms of how you approach your income generation planning. So when I talk about income generation cocktails, I'm talking about this. And so I'm talking about trading, I'm talking about commissioning, fundraising, funding, and the more intensive and high growth social finance, loans and wider investment. And so this session really is going to walk through what some of these things are and hopefully give you some time to think about how you might be doing some of this now and whether it's effective and what else you could be doing, but what else you're perhaps not doing yet, and thinking about whether spreading how you're thinking around income generation might work or come from to help plan and build sustainability from a number of angles. So I was just going to walk through what some of these things are, and you might want to jot down as you're listening, doodle out this. Normally when we run this workshop in the real world, we give you a kind of handout that's got trading, commission, a printout of this. You might want to doodle out these boxes as we go and think about what you're doing in that space currently, and where you're having some successes and where you're not, and where you're perhaps not doing anything yet, but ideas that crop up that you could be looking at. So first things first, I wanted to come to trading first, because I think that's a theme that, or an area that most people understand in a nutshell. So here, this slide is showing you a range of social enterprises that are trading in different ways. So for example, this secret book here, that's the Secret Dishes from Around the World book. That's a product, so that there are both products that social enterprises sell, and there are services and which are more like training programs or education, or there's not a physical thing that you put in your hand. You're experiencing something, or you're attending something. So this first one that I was going to just have a look at, the secret book, there is an example of where a social enterprise, which was Bounce Back Food, that's based in Manchester, they run cooking. They've got a pay it forward model. It's a buy one give one model. So for every cooking class that somebody buys, they give a cooking class place to somebody out in the wider community, and they work in quite diverse communities around Manchester and Cheshire, and run cooking classes. And what they realised is that in addition to what they could generate from the cooking classes and to gain momentum and enhance what they were doing, they crowdfunded for this cookery book, and they're now on their second book. They seem to be having some success in with all of this, from what we've seen, you wouldn't run a second one if the first one hadn't worked. And they generate income both through service delivery, product development like this. They also have merchandise and other things like that, and they sell food goods as well. So they've got a real cocktail even within their trading. And in addition to that, they do seek grant funding and contracts. But I just thought I'd share, you know, and there's an example there of a product that evolved for them through realising and listening to what their market might need. We work with lots of social enterprise cafes. There's this cafe, sort of outdoor pop-up cafe here, was based at Hume Community Garden Centre for some time. And they were mainly a product-based business, so they were selling coffee and tea, and you know, it was quite an easy model to understand there. But in addition to what they can run out of their mini cafe there, and because they're working in the area of Hume, there's an area of disadvantage, and they're trying to support people back into work and to build their food and nutrition skills. They're also applying for grants and running educational courses, so cooking courses, nutrition courses, and they also run events. So they're trading in a range of ways, even from out of that tiny shed in the middle of the garden centre there. So just a different example of where people have got physical goods that they're selling, as well as then looking at what they can then generate in terms of courses and educational activities through grants and other means. Some of you might have come across the Divine Chocolate model. In essence, again, they're a product-based business. They're selling chocolate, but what they also have done behind the scenes is develop a number of learning and educational resources, which people might not realise. So there's different ways of coming at this. I think if you're naturally a service-based business, I know we've got quite a lot of health and wellbeing businesses in our cohort and programme at the moment. We've got quite a lot of education and learning. Those naturally sit as service-based businesses, and you're trying to develop these services that people will either pay to attend, or in many cases, you're applying for some sort of grant or contract to deliver that, to make that free at the point of access. And it's later on then that you look at, well, what additional products or what additional items or things could I be selling in addition to what I'm doing to generate further income? So that's one route. But on the flip side, there are people who come naturally from a product side, where they've got the goods in their hands and they're trying to sell them to the public, and it's only later on they realise, actually, I can be trying to, you know, flog as many of these, you know, heart-shaped soaps as I like till the cows come home, but financially, is my business going to be viable if I'm selling soap and bath bombs alone? And actually, would I generate more income if I ran a training course or a training program, or if I, you know, created a book that sold for £20 a copy, or created an app that helped me do this, that, and the other? So I just show you, you know, I can talk about other examples of these again, but I just wanted to give you a feel for how different social enterprises are juggling the routes to trade. I think one final one I'll just mention before we move on to commissioning is Me Again. So Me Again is an organisation that was set up by a lady called Deborah, who's a hairdresser. You know, first and foremost, she's had a career in hairdressing, but what she realised was a lot of people who experience cancer and are living with cancer, clearly, if they have hair loss and other needs, there's a lot more that people need help and support with. And she evolved her skill set and her business into a kind of holistic health venture, where, as well as providing the hairdressing services to the general public that they do, she started providing specialist holistic health services, so massage therapy and support to women and their families with cancer, and also wig making services, and it transformed her business and her kind of career in a way as both a hairdresser and a holistic health practitioner and supporter of people with cancer. And, you know, in addition to the hairdressing and the holistic therapies and what they do, that she also started kind of weekly coffee mornings that have evolved into additional support programs. So it's just the idea that you originally start with, when you start peeling back the layers of the onion, when you start doing your research with the people that you're trying to work with, and when you start looking at what people are prepared to spend their money on, it soon starts to pop up new opportunities, new ideas, and other ways of selling products and services directly to who it is you're trying to work with. So that's trading. The other one at the top here, commissioning, I was just going to come back to. So commissioning is selling your products and services en masse to a kind of, it's almost like a bulk buy, if you will, a bulk buy through a commissioner usually. So trading tends to be with the direct public, or trading business to business, but you're making a direct transaction with the purchaser, and your customer is who you're seeing and who you're selling to, and who's benefiting from what those products and services are. Commissioning is where your direct beneficiaries are not necessarily paying for what's happening. The commissioner or the middleman or the middlewoman is bulk buying stuff, usually services and programs as opposed to products, but not necessarily. It's a way of almost wholesaling your services, so that you don't have to go out and individually necessarily find those direct beneficiaries. Well, you probably do in terms of running a course, but they're not having to, the individuals coming to what it is you're doing are either subsidized or are offered what it is you're running because commissioners have commissioned you to deliver stuff. And there's different levels of commissioning, I would say, depending on what it is you're trying to do, the size of your organization, and the kinds of budgets that you need to be, budget holders as well, that you need to be approaching in order to run what it is you're trying to do. I was just going to run through what some of the commissioning considerations are here, and talk around those a little bit, but also think about some of the sort of larger commissioning and procurement portals that are out there, as you'll see. So I think in order to get into commissioning, people will often write themselves off and think, oh, I'm not ready, or oh, I can't do this, or oh, I don't know how to go about this. But there are all sorts of commissioners out there. Basically, a commissioner is a budget holder, somebody who's got a budget, got some cash, and needs to deliver certain outcomes, services, or activities in order to achieve a goal, or in order to achieve what that budget's been set out to run or to deliver. And so me and Joe are commissioners, mini commissioners. So there are lots of voluntary sector commissioners who are running their own organisations that need to outsource work and that need to outsource activities because they can't run it all, or because they need help or expertise in certain areas. So there are then different kinds of commissioners at a kind of sectoral level, like health and social care commissioners, or educational commissioners, local authority commissioners, joint commissioners that straddle a few areas. And these people are normally have larger budgets and are managing a whole range of different types of projects or outcomes that they need to deliver. So I think when people think, oh, what is this, and am I ready for commissioning? It's just worth bearing in mind that, you don't have to be £1 million turnover organisation, and you don't have to be going for some massive, piece of procurement that's, out of your reach to think, I can't do this. Do think about people who've got smaller budgets, who might commission work, or who are needing basically to outsource certain elements of what it is they're doing. So it's just people, sometimes people don't realise that and even when commissioners in health and education and local authorities, as I say, commissioners with large budgets who are looking for people to deliver quite large scale services, usually they're often looking for new talent, and they're looking for innovative ideas, and they're looking for ways that people might do things differently to reach new audiences, to adapt to changes in what's going on. And often people running social enterprises, startups and community organisations are the ideal sorts of people that commissioners might be interested in. It's just about building your track record, building your reputation, and building that trust with commissioners, so that you're on their radar for starters, and so that they might take a risk on working with you. And often ways to go about doing that and getting on their radar are multifold. Sometimes it's about being at events where they are. Sometimes it's about getting on boards or getting on forums or being part of panels where you'll be on in and around where commissioners are. And sometimes it's around approaching them, say, you know, we've seen that the latest strategic priorities, or we've seen that the latest report that you produce says this, this, and this, and we think that we could achieve this for you in these kinds of ways. And you know, we'd be really keen to pilot an initiative, or we'd be really keen to help you deliver further research. There's routes into commissioning from the bottom up, which are normally around helping with consultations, helping with research, or piloting something, which gives you traction, track record, and introductions to testing things out with commissioners, for them to trust you and for them to know that your organisation can handle a contract, or can handle a larger commissioning opportunity. So it's just something to bear in mind, even if that's 6 months, a year, or 3 years off from where you're at now. Don't discount this, because it can save you a lot of time and effort in trying to find individual people who will pay for your thing, and especially in diverse and disadvantaged communities where people may or may not have the means to pay for what it is you're trying to do. Having someone who can commission that, and you're delivering health and wellbeing outcomes for them, you're delivering educational outcomes for them, environmental improvement outcomes for them, skills and knowledge gap outcomes for them. There's lots of ways that our sector can help commissioners, albeit it can be challenging to do that, and it takes time to build those relationships. I would just say, don't discount it. And there's a tick box list I'm not going to read through here in terms of what commissioners are looking for when they're thinking about whether or not to involve organisations like yours, or work with people like yourself. As a step up from commissioning, so there's commissioners who will commission specific pieces of work, or there's commissioners who will pilot and test and research and consult. But then a step up from that is kind of procurement, where as a result of policy or certain strategies that health, education, local authorities, housing, and other sectors create, they know that they need particular services delivering across a wide scale, or in bulk at a large number, and startups are rarely ready or relevant for procurement opportunities. But by the time someone's been running 3 to 5 years, there's a good chance that what you're delivering and what you're having to offer may meet certain procurement needs. And these portals here that we've got, and other procurement portals in your local area, will tell you whether or not there are particular opportunities around at the moment that you might be able to bid for or pitch for. And if you're too small, or if you're not quite fitting the criteria, not quite ready to engage with that, but you're interested and you want to, that's when you can potentially think about collaborating with other people that are in that ball pool, that have got the right level of turnover and the administration capabilities and can work at scale. Those kinds of organisations are often looking to subcontract with others, because they can't necessarily do it all, or they need expertise or routes into certain communities to have wider reach and better impact. And so thinking about and looking at who's winning commissions, who's winning procurement opportunities in your sector or in your area, and talk to them about it, and finding out what they do, and seeing if they need additional hands on deck, or being aware of how you could add value to what they're trying to do, gives you a hook and a foot in to having those sorts of conversations with people. So that's commissioning. We've done trading. So we've covered trading and commissioning for starters. I'm going to look at the next sections and just do a whistle-stop tour of funding and and fundraising for people. I know it's a topic that we've talked about a little bit, and we do have another Listen Again workshop around achieving bid writing success. So I'm not going to go into huge lengths on this, but it's just as part of this cocktail, thinking, how does this all fit together, and how does all this fit in with what I'm doing? So people sometimes mix up funding and fundraising. And just come back. Funding are those lovely application forms that we get to fill in, eventually. So funding is bids and applications where there's criteria, where you're answering key questions and you're pitching and applying for a certain amount of money to deliver certain things as part of an application from a pot of pre-existing money, usually, that's got to be spent in a certain way, doing certain things, and you are or aren't eligible, and you can and can't apply depending on how you set up and the way you operate. Fundraising is a different kettle of fish because it's much more unrestricted. I'm calling it here sort of free money, which it's not strictly true, but there's less strings attached to some of this stuff, and it's just people sometimes forget the range of opportunities, resources, and money that's out there that can help you, whether you're starting out, whether you're testing an idea, or whether you've been running for years. These are still relevant, and so just a quick run through some of this stuff. So clearly, some of you will have come across crowdfunding, which is a way of using certain online platforms, usually to generate cash to do something specific. Usually there are a range of platforms out there, and we are running a workshop and a podcast on crowdfunding specifically in the next couple of months to help people look at whether that is or isn't for them by NatWest. But I think if it's not already on your radar, having a look at whether crowdfunding is a relevant thing for you. It's certainly not something to be undertaken lightly and rushed into, and there are some golden rules to crowdfunding that we can run through in another workshop. So something to look into if you have a pre-existing crowd and a pre-existing community, and if you have a community that could pitch in cash and support to whatever it is you're doing. Sponsorship and CSR is usually with larger organisations, corporates, but not exclusively. It could be with the media and others, where people are sponsoring certain aspects or elements of what you are doing. Usually it's a financial sponsorship, but it might be an advertising and awareness sponsorship, and just thinking, what do I run and do that people might be interested in sponsoring or putting their name to, and supporting in that way. Along with that, as much as the sponsorship can be about cash, or CSR, it can be about cash, it's a much easier request, or it's a much easier relationship to go to those organisations for other forms of pro bono asking people for money up front, or asking people to sponsor this for X amount of money, may or may not be an appropriate thing to do for how well you know that organisation and for what it is you're offering them, and how well you understand how interested they are in what you're doing. But going to them to ask for support, or to ask for marketing support, or to ask for some other pro bono support is often a good route in to developing and starting a relationship with an organisation that might develop a kind of CSR type relationship with you. I'll give you a quick example. So there was an organisation I worked with down in London a number of years ago, and they were running a kind of food delivery and food bank type services. It was a long time ago, and it was in quite a remote area where there weren't a lot of shops around. It was a long distance to travel to the nearest Asda type thing, but there was a huge estate, large community, and they weren't getting access to the amenities, the food and the quality of food that they needed. And so this food van was set up, and what the person that set this up went and did was talk to a local business, which happened to be Tate and Lyle, the sugar company, who were based locally. And they said, look, there are these needs in the community. We don't know if you're aware, but the community could really do with some help in these ways. And we know we need to market ourselves better to get out there. could anybody in your marketing department give us some advice? Could anybody in your marketing department just talk to us about our ideas or give us some tips? You know, there was no ask for money, no request for anything other than, could your marketing manager or your marketing assistant spend an hour with us to just hear us out and see if they've got any guidance for us? And from that initial starting point, they gained all sorts. I mean, once people get into what you're doing and they've got an affinity for what you're doing and they can see how it can potentially benefit them, different opportunities then snowball from there. So eventually they'd got space to store their goods in a spare corner of the Tate and Lyle factory that wasn't being used. They ended up giving them two vans to deliver their stuff around. And, you know, there were all sorts of other things that happened and they got financial benefit from through taking it slowly and not, you know, pouncing on organisations without fully understanding what might be the best ask. So it's just something to bear in mind if you're looking at that sort of stuff. And clearly the sponsorship, CSR and partnering with local businesses are a similar story there. Membership can be right for your organisation. You know, people charge a membership fee, or there's a membership cost or subs or whatever it is, depending on how you run. That can be an additional income source. You have to bear in mind the admin of all of that. So as much as, you know, let's say you've got 50 to 100 or 200 people that access your thing, and maybe they can contribute whatever, whether it's £5, £20, £100 to what, you know, as a membership fee, to help with your, you know, some of your basic overheads. It's just thinking about, is that relevant for your community? Is it manageable, and what's the admin involved in that in order to make that work? E-fundraising and social media really sort of ties in with the crowdfunding side of things, but there are all sorts of ways of putting calls out and attracting people to get involved with what you're doing through online opportunities. And so it's, you know, are you tech savvy in that area? Do you understand how the kind of social media world can help in terms of fundraising activities? You know, there's all sorts of options through Facebook and through other sites as well that can set up small scale opportunities. So something to think about. I'm not going to labour too much over community shares and social impact bonds, because I don't think it's a workshop in itself, but it's almost a step up, if you will, from crowdfunding. Certainly community shares are when are often used when people are developing assets or physical buildings or environmental projects, or regenerating buildings, making sure that they can maintain things in a certain way, and there's normally a sort of a real community link to whatever it is happening, and people will pay a certain amount for a share in the building or the regeneration that's taking place, and sometimes they'll get something back in return for that. Sometimes it's the dividend that they get, so people will pay a certain amount for a share. Those shares can sit within the organisation that's asking for that money for a period of time. So you can set a time period before people can then withdraw shares, or before people would get any kind of dividend back, you know. So there's parameters that you can set to make that manageable and to take some of the risk out of that. And there's lots of examples of community pubs, community shops, community centres that have set up community share issues to put calls out for people. There's quite a bit of administration involved in all of that again. So crowdfunding is probably a more light touch version of that. Community shares, there's quite a bit more to them, but they can work in certain circumstances, and especially if you're looking to raise large amounts of money. Social impact bonds are a slightly different thing again, where a bond is set around impact and outcomes, usually health outcomes, educational outcomes, you know, crime reduction outcomes. They're a less common thing, and they're a less attractive thing in recent years, but there's something to think about. And clearly it's something that a lot of you might already be doing, ticketed events in a way, if they're done in the spirit of a fundraising event, can be another form of that. So kind of gone around the houses on a few, and ultimately people forget about the amount of free resources out there. I touched on pro bono before, but in any business, social enterprise or otherwise, if you look, and Morag's going to be talking later about budgets and cash flow and that sort of thing, marketing costs and premises costs and transport costs, staffing costs, are there elements within any of that that you can find pro bono? We've still never taken on an office, and we rarely have paid for room hire, because we've developed relationships with certain partners and certain organisations, so that where we need physical space, we can access that. So, getting in-kind support on whatever, marketing, premises, even people on around who might be on your board or in community groups that you're working with. What are you able to I guess glean and galvanise from who you're working with in kind, especially in the early years, or especially if you're a charitable organisation, that will help you maximise the money that you do have to be spent on other areas. And that's ultimately what fundraising is about. In terms of considering routes to finance, and as I say, with funding and funding applications and accessing support, this little list here is just giving you a feel for where you might be able to go to access stuff. And what I always say to people is, have a good think. Don't just think about the obvious. So I will always say, yes, have a look locally at where you've got opportunities and what's going on, because clearly there are councils for voluntary services, there's enterprise support, different forums, even your local universities and arts organisations. There'll be all sorts locally where there are small grants, medium to large grants, and networks to connect with people, to think things through, to collaborate, or to find out about what exists. But there's also thinking about what's going on regionally, nationally, and sectorally. So in addition to the stuff that's on your doorstep or what you know about, where else could you be accessing support, really? Be that through grants and opportunities, be that through training, be that through being aware of I guess, policy changes or strategic information that will help you get ahead of the game when it comes to being aware of what funding and opportunities are around, but also being in a good position to go for this stuff. And I've just highlighted a bunch here. Key Fund operate across the north. I think they started out of Sheffield, but they do operate across most of the north now, and they have grants and loans and other support. The School for Social Entrepreneurs operate regionally, and lots of people that we've supported have progressed onto the School for Social Entrepreneurs. It's an intensive support programme. They have a relationship with different partners, certainly Lloyds, TSB, the Lloyds Foundation, the Lloyds Bank. They have been offering cash grants attached to their programme for a number of years now, and it's something to look at if you're needing additional support beyond our programme and want to connect with people across the Northwest. And there are social enterprise support networks. So Greater Manchester is a bit of a challenge, but there is the Greater Manchester Social Enterprise Support Network. There's GMCVO, and there are other local initiatives. So, for example, in Wigan, you've got Wigan Community Partnership Group there. You've got Abram Ward Cooperative, and various others we can chat about. But accessing that regional support can really help. Nationally, I won't run through all those, but there's a whole heap of national funders, either more in the social enterprise world, more in the charity world, that fund all sorts of things. Clearly there's the lottery, and often people will approach Awards for All as a first port of fund in the lottery to kind of find their feet with the lottery and to demonstrate track record, build their capacity and capability to then go on to perhaps some of their larger, more sort of capacity building or thematic grants that they offer. And there's all sorts of others listed there. One thing I will say as well is people often don't look into what they're doing in terms of sector. So I support health, education, youth, environmental. There are all sorts of grants around to further the development of these areas, and further outcomes and impact and improve these areas. And we can work with you to think about what a bid pipeline might look like when you're in a position to do that. And what I will say is, grants aren't for everybody. I just wanted to check something. Yeah, grants aren't for everybody, and so you have to be in a particular position to go for this stuff. You have to have a minimum of 3 non-related directors or trustees, and you have to have a bank account with 2 signatories, a kind of almost baseline starting points, and then from there on you have to have a plan, you have to be credible, and you have to be offering something that's a suitable idea to what funders or investors would want to see, which we're going to go on to quickly in a second. This is just some websites really showing you there's all sorts of funding portals out there you can go and have a look at. Most of them are free, some are paid for, but there's a lot of free stuff. There is this guide for the ambitious social entrepreneur that is still fairly relevant, and Joe and I put together our own toolkit, which I should have probably put in here. We'll send you links to after, which some of you have seen before. Flourishing Beyond COVID, it's called, and there's over 100 links to different funds, support, and other opportunities to help social enterprises to flourish, and links to different funds that you could consider. Just to step on for that, there's funding that can help you with all sorts of things. It can help you when you're starting up, and it can help you when you're scaling up. What I would say about funding is it's hard. You could spend 10 hours seeking business leads and seeking repeat business with people you've already worked with. You can spend 10 hours on a funding bid, and there's a good chance you'd get a better return from the first option. With funding, you never know if you're going to get it. There's always a risk. There's always a high level of competition, and in the current climate through the pandemic, funding priorities, the level of competitiveness, and everything like that is become difficult. So I would suggest funding is good for testing ideas and for really reaching those people in communities who couldn't otherwise access what it is you're trying to do. But for everything else, I would look at other options. Certainly not becoming funding reliant is the goal, because it's not a viable thing to run, and it's exhausting putting together funding bids and waiting and wondering whether you're going to get them, and knowing if the timescales of the way the funding bids work are actually going to meet with what you need to do anyway. So that's why we say this cocktail of funding, fundraising, trading and commissioning are all important to look at. The last box in that chart was the one in the middle, the big purple diamond in the middle, and it was talking about social investment. And we term social investment more as that next step on, where you're looking for a larger amount of money that typically might look more like a part loan or a social investment loan, or it might also look like angel investment and equity investment. And so something to think about for the future as to whether or not that's something that you might need or want to look at. Ultimately, a lot of the criteria around any of this stuff is quite similar to grant funding. It's just there's a higher level of what they call due diligence, and there's a higher level of starting point that you need to be at to be able to go for some of this stuff. There is this good little toolkit that it's worth you using, I would say, whether you're going for grant funding or social investment, because it asks you a whole series of questions that helps you think about how ready for social investment or some form of investment are you, and the whole series of questions that you run through from, to what extent are you trying to create social change? How do you go about measuring your impact? So how do you know you're making a difference? What's your business model? What's your scaling strategy? What's your financial model? What's your legal structure? can you work within financing terms, which is, you know, if you're going for loans, and how ready are you for an investment pitch, and that tool that I'm sort of showing here is something that is relevant for anybody. It will up your sort of knowledge around being ready for being investable at whatever level, and start aiming high. There's no harm in aiming high and testing yourself out in some of this stuff to get yourself prepared for things further down the line. I'm conscious we are almost at time here, so I'm just going to I just want to move along to wrap up really, and just thinking about, you know, in getting ready for sustaining what you're doing, and in getting ready for in having full confidence in what you're doing, so that you can then pitch to others, and you can prepare strong applications and have strong conversations with commissioners or whoever else. There are certain critical success factors to being ready and to having what you need in place, and you know, this just sums that up really. You know, thinking about, you know, who the people, you know, having the right people involved, you know, so, you know, your team, understanding who your stakeholders, customers and beneficiaries are, which we covered in an earlier session, understanding and being able to clearly communicate what your proposition is, you know, so what your social mission is, how you're offering to meet the needs of your community, that funder, that commissioner, and what your plan for sustainability is with whatever it is you're running and beyond, is important. Knowing and understanding how you're going to measure the performance of what you do, you know, so it's both reporting back on what you're doing, building that impact and track record. And I would say within social enterprises and charities, this isn't just about key performance indicators. This is also about your sort of social value metrics and your impact measurement standards, to know that you're definitely achieving the impact that you set out to achieve and more. And clearly having a clear plan is ultimately what it's all about, both an operational plan around, you know, what it is you do and how things work and in practice, but also having figures that add up and make sense, whether that's at a budget level or whether that's at, you know, a full set of accounts level. These things are all things that help you convince funders, commissioners and anyone else to back and support you. So conscious that we're getting to time, and I know Joe's session is due to start. That is pretty much a wrap up of where we were. We've gone around the houses. We've looked at trading, commissioning, fundraising and funding. As I say, we have a full workshop on achieving bid writing success, which is why I haven't gone into the ins and outs of all sorts of funds and the criteria and all of that. We'll share that link with you to look at. But we're not at lunch, so don't panic, but lunch is in a little while. I just wanted to see, before we go into Joe's session there, whether anybody had any quick questions or any comments or thoughts that we can come back to people on afterwards. Anybody? Anything major there? Oh, are you still with me? Whistle stop tour. Oh, I think you're on mute there, Alice. Were you?
Yes, we are still with you.
Oh, good. Phew. There's a lot in there, I appreciate, but
it's just a very quick question about on the commissioning side of getting on the social prescribing kind of remit, of exploring that. Have you got any information about how you end up working with refugees?
Good question. It's, for me, I mean, I've worked around this, and you know, this term gets bandied about a lot. I don't know whether Joe's got any better suggestions. For me, there are certain social prescribing champions, and there are people within certain organisations who can help you with this. I'm certainly not an expert in it. For me, I found that developing one-to-one relationships with people in health and social care, or developing one-to-one relationships with GPs would be an initial port of call. Ultimately, the money these days, it used to be that you could work with a commissioner and the commissioner would commission programs and certain things, and that's still the case in certain things. But now, because people get individual budgets, you've got to market yourself to the individuals, and there are certain directories and there are certain portals and there are certain signposting tools that mental health, physical health professionals and GPs and others have, but it's still, in my mind, is still a bit of a minefield. And there are from time to time with some of the CVS's workshops on this, and I think this is a topic that comes up, and I think I'm certainly keen before the end of our programme to look at how we might, look at how we could bring specialists in to talk to people about this, because there's a lot of health and social care ventures across our programs at the moment. So I can commit to a follow-up session on that. Whether Joe or anyone else has got anything they want to add that's a genius nugget of how to get into social prescribing. It's not something I've seen many people crack. My top tips are speak to people who are doing it, and I can put you in touch with some organisations like the Sewing Rooms in Skelmersdale and a handful of others who've cracked this a little bit further. Wellbeing Enterprises, Mark Swift there is doing some of this, but other than nobbling people who have been successful at it and talking to commissioners and GPs directly, it's still not a straightforward thing as far as I can see. Joe, any tips?
No, I think you're absolutely right there, Nicola. I think it's building those relationships with people working in that space. It is like, whether there's some responsibility in the local authority and there's some responsibility obviously in GP practices, which will be through the clinical commissioning group. But I believe in Wigan, I think it's integrated, isn't it? I think the local authority is integrated with the CCG. So yeah, it's understanding who those people are. It's then, yeah, and on the flip side is finding out those who are already accessing those opportunities and finding out what, how they did it. But no, there isn't any kind of silver bullet for this. It really is about relationship building, unfortunately, and it's hit and miss across different local authorities across GM. Some have embraced it more than others.
There is the Greater Manchester.
I know there is a commitment in Wigan.
Yeah. Sure. Sorry, I was just going to say there is Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership, and they, there's their website, and you could look at, what the strategy is saying, and the CVSs will have some tools and resources to help you navigate this. But yeah, definitely no silver bullet, and absolutely funding and commission.
One thing to just say, Nicola.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
It's just preparing for that conversation when you have it is around being able to evidence the impact of your intervention. So, I wouldn't go too early on having those conversations. If you actually get there, definitely, be in a position where you've managed to, really demonstrate what difference your work is doing in that space. And it might be that you've got, evidence of it happening elsewhere, like other projects or good practice, because I think there's a lot of stuff online around social prescribing and its benefits, but some of your own kind of, you've taken this person from A to B and this was a result. So I think just being prepared as well, and having that evidence base, because they'll only kind of do it if there is the evidence base there. They may pilot something with you without the evidence base, but generally if they're going to commission you, it would be definitely, you'd have to have that.
This was my thing about potentially that sustainability sort of long term, so not an initial approach, but just like, is that actually possible?
Yeah, the answer is yeah, but I think that's more of a commissioning arrangement, which, again, that's really hard to get into and understand what the commissioning timetables are and things without understanding and getting to know somebody within the local authority of the CCG. But certainly, yeah, I would have it down as a business development opportunity for sure. I'm just saying it's not that easy, and it differs from local authority to local authority, unfortunately.
Fab. Conscious of time there, and I think if people have got other questions, they could put them in the chat. I have been responding to a few as I'm picking up on some of those now, and certainly, lots of people on our programme have constituted themselves. Other people haven't. You do usually have to be a constituted group, some sort of potentially some sort of company structure. We ran a legal structure session, and we can share the listener gain links on that. But basically, there are very few funders that will fund you as an individual. There are some, so Unlimited and some small SSE and some other sort of startup kind of piloting ideas and pioneering ideas type funds will fund you as an individual. Paul Hamlin has a ideas to pioneers fund, but most need that minimum of 3 non-related directors, trustees, or management committee members. So we can talk to people on a one-to-one about that sort of thing. Conscious we've ran over a little bit on time, but we'll catch up a little bit. It might eat 10 minutes into lunch to still give a 20-minute lunch break. So as I say, yeah, pop any further questions in the chat. I'm going to did you want to actually I'll reshare the screen, Joe, and unless you want to share your own workshop so you can click yourself through.
No, you can share it, that's fine.
I'll pop it there. We're back up in our workshop. So Joe, I'm going to hand over 7 steps to starting an enterprise, just to as a before lunch, helping people refresh and take stock on this stuff. So if you let me know when you want me to move you along.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Michaela. Yeah, I thought before we launch into kind of the steps to start an enterprise, which a lot, we've covered many of these aspects. We've done the business canvas, we've talked about that, we've talked about, the funding environment and all of that. But I thought it'd be good, because we are midpoint through the program, is just about taking stock really around, why is it we're doing this? What craziness have we got ourselves into? But more importantly, just try to understand kind of, a couple of people have mentioned, I'm not sure where I am at, I'm not sure what to do with this, I'm feeling a little bit stressed around not knowing where I'm going, etc. So I thought, one of the good things you could do for yourself, and I think this should happen periodically, I don't think it should just happen at a point in time, I think it should happen quite regularly, is just take that time to take stock of where you're at. Why do you want to start a business, or why did you want to start a business? Getting back to really, what are the things that motivate you? Is it to provide some money, to provide some financial independence? Is it around being free from a job, a relationship, whatever it is, what is that, what freedom is that going to give you? Is it around the flexibility, so you can manage sort of caring responsibilities or other things in your life, or are you just purely set on solving a problem? Are you completely mission driven, and it's like, right, I just need to solve this problem, and if I don't solve it in my community, I couldn't live with myself, type of thing? And it might be a mix of those things, but I just really do encourage you to sort of maybe take some time over the next couple of weeks to kind of take stock and think about where you're at. And sometimes you may have started a business for a particular reason, but as you get into it, those reasons change. You may have thought that you didn't want to work full time because the job that you were doing wasn't fulfilling, so you hated it, but actually you're doing your own thing and you do want to work more hours, you do want to earn some more money, and things do change along the way. And I think knowing yourself and working in a job that does cater to your strengths, but also acknowledge where your weaknesses are, it does give you that knowledge to make you feel happier and less stressed. So it's a good idea just to think about what your skills are and what potential weaknesses are. And a good way of doing that is just conduct a little self-assessment. You may have thought that you were pretty good at scheduling time and carving out time, but other things have got in the way. So do you need to look for a tool, something to help you do that? So do a bit of a SWOT analysis on yourself. We always talk about doing SWOT analysis in terms of your business idea, but do one on yourself. What are your strengths, your weaknesses? What do you see as the opportunities? And what are some of the personal threats that may stop you from getting where you are? And that could be lack of access to time, the fact that we're in lockdown, we've got children at home. So that may impact on your time frame for what you thought was going to be some successes quite early on, may need to be pushed down the road a little bit, but don't give yourself a hard time around that. That's because of your environment's changed. And I think that's it. I think we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And what I'm asking you to do is just you know, reflect back on, you know, where we're at now, and think about, you know, what are some of the things that might get in your way, and do you need to revise your plan. And I think some of the things that we also need to think about is, what would you do if, really what matters to you. I think that's the main thing, because that's the thing that's going to get you out of bed in the morning. That's the thing that's going to drive you to make this thing a success. I do think that just thinking about whether you have got the time and resource to create a product. So, you know, I think some people come into setting up an organisation and they're quite product driven, but you know, is that realistic for you? And to create a product creates, you know, you need some initial investment. Or are you providing a service? I think most of the people on the call today are providing some kind of service, but it may result in some kind of product being developed, maybe through a workshop or something like that. But again, that's really important to differentiate between whether it's a service or a product. And then, you know, will it be part-time or full-time? You know, I know a lot of people have gone into like freelancing or set up a business and they've thought, yeah, that'd be great, I'll just work Monday to Thursday and have my Friday off, or I'll have a great long weekend. And the reality is that doesn't happen. And, you know, are you prepared for that? Are you able to accommodate that? Or are you just going to end up getting very, very stressed? So just go back on kind of your initial motivations and think about why you wanted to get involved in this and why you wanted to set this up in the first place. And I think that does help take some of the stress away, just being clear of you know, what's getting in the way. Next slide, please, Nicola.
Sure.
I think we've talked about some of the things that stress us out as well, is that we're not sure exactly who we're marketing to or who exactly are our, you know, our customer. And I think being really clear on that can really help focus you. And then we talked about it in the business model canvas. You know, what is the value that you're offering to your beneficiaries, and what's the value that you're offering to your customers, and are your beneficiaries and your customers the same people or market? And I think the only way we can refine our idea is you know, spending that time to you know, really plan. I think, you know, the problem with entrepreneurs or social entrepreneurs is that we see a problem and we just want to fix it quickly. And I think just taking a step back and really refining what it is that you want to achieve and testing it with people and getting people to give you feedback is such a key part of setting up an enterprise. And I do think, and I don't know whether anybody's worked on the business model canvas since we had the session, but I do find that the best way. It just gives you that one pager, and it really helps you just kind of be a bit more clear on where you're going and what you're trying to achieve. Next slide, please. Again, I think some of the things that in my experience, it certainly happened when I set up my business. I didn't do a huge amount of research. I just felt that I knew that there was a need out there, and you know, and I thought I could fill it, which was fine. But you know, come on, I you know, wanted to go out there and, you know, support social entrepreneurs to flourish, of course. And I realised very quickly that social entrepreneurs didn't have the money to pay for me to do that. There was lots of social entrepreneurs out there that wanted some support, but actually they weren't the people that were going to be my customer ultimately. So I had to quickly, you know, really think about, you know, who on earth is going to pay for my services or work with me to commission me to support social entrepreneurs. And you know, it was a bit of a wake-up call, because I came back from this like life-changing trip to India, and I thought, you know, I came back all spiritual and thought, yeah, this is great. And then suddenly realized that my business model was pants, and you know, I needed to really find a customer. So, you know, really do your research. Who seriously is going to buy your product or service? And who are your competitors? You know, who are those people out there that are similar to you, and what makes you different? And you can do a lot of this. You can do it a lot online, I guess, but I would recommend that you, you know, you do look, you know, get some feedback off people that maybe have been a customer of a competitor or someone in your market. So, you know, like you, Morag, you know, with the Northwest numbers, you know, maybe people that have already had some access to some support around finance and planning and things like that, and cash flowing and things, you know, what didn't work for them, you know, when they had that advice of that person, and what makes you different, you know, and what's your approach? Have you got a particular model that works, and you've tested and refined, and you can say, you know, these are the things that make me different, and that make me more accessible, and people understand me more because, you know, you've maybe have got some lived experience of that, or you know what is it that's that can make you stand out in a crowded marketplace, I suppose. So you really do think about that, and, you know, are people urgently needing what you're selling and offering right now? You know, if they're not, then, you know, when might they need it most? And how do I get to those people when they need it most? And what are the messages for people to buy off you? You know, how much is it going to cost you to get hold of a customer? You know, is it going to cost you a lot of marketing? Are you going to have to buy Google ads? Are you going to have to attend loads of different events? Because there's a cost attached to that. It's your time. You know, so you just really need to work out, you know, how much it's going to cost you to get to that customer, and what makes you attracted to that customer. Like I said, what's your kind of unique selling point? I just think, you know, you need to make sure your business also remains relevant. Sometimes, you know, we might set off on a path, but the relevance of a certain business that may have existed before COVID may not be relevant anymore, and there might be businesses that have come into the marketplace that are far more relevant. So, you know, relevant in terms of, like, you know, sit down cafe experience, and that's not going to happen during COVID, but a really strong takeaway offer has become more relevant, and, you know, you have to flex and pivot your businesses to respond to that. So, you know, think about how, you know, before, whenever you thought about setting up your business, if it was before COVID hit, you know, I mean, talked about before around, you know, pivoting businesses to online, so Zoom sessions and things like that. You know, are you able to do that? Have you got the skills and technology to do that? So yeah, it's really really figure out, you know, what your customers really value. And then you really need to validate your idea. So I would really say, you know, you want to test that out there with people. So, you know, you don't even have to do that in person, which is very difficult right now. But if you can send out surveys, or even like Facebook polls, or the Twitter polls, or Facebook questionnaires, you just ask people, you know, is this something that would interest you? Does this sound like something that you would buy? And you can get that really quick, like, click response to things, rather than putting out massive, like, survey monkey surveys around your product. And, you know, you just really want to know how many customers that you need to kind of get in to get that money coming through the door. Like Nicola said before, you know, is that going to be, are you directly marketing your product to a customer and you expecting them to purchase it, or are you looking to get it commissioned, or are you looking to set up, you know, get a grant in to fund it? So really, yeah, try and understand kind of what your income generation strategy is going to be. Because some of this is, you know, if you can get some grants in early doors, it's brilliant, because you can really test and get that evidence base that I talked about before that you'll need for when you go and meet with commissioners or try and sell it to your customer. I think grant funding is really great at the beginning. It's just making sure you get the most most that you can out of that, to ensure that it backs up your business plan and your business development. The next one, Michaela. And this is it. I think if you don't have a written down plan, then things do fall off your to-do list. I really do recommend you develop a bit of a roadmap for your business, and that you really write down the things that you need to reach your goals and set milestones, and really assign times and tasks and names to these, just to make sure that you yourself's accountable and others are. And this is a really basic milestone plan. You know, I've written these before where I've kind of made myself accountable to completing things, or recognise that I need the support of others. So, you know, you write your task down, who it's assigned to, when it's going to happen, and really try and stick to that. Things may slip, which is fine, but I think unless you've written it down and assigned dates to it, it generally doesn't happen. Well, it doesn't in my world anyway. I'm a great fan of lists and milestone plans, because I think that's the best way to make sure I'm on track for things. And you know, these things do take a bit of time to do, but once you've got them written down, there's a bit of a comfort that they bring, a bit of a safety net, kind of. You know, if your head's all over the place, you've got your head dipped into homeschooling, you've got your whatever's going on, your boiler's broken, you know, at least something's written down and that you can stay on track with, and try and hold yourself to account. Like I say, this doesn't have to be just assigned to you. Just look at other people around you that can support and help make these plans come to life. The next one, please. And then I think thinking about your legal structure, or at least your governance of your organisation, I think this is a really important part of starting an enterprise. And I do, some of you have mentioned that you've got a bit of a legal structure already, or you've got a legal structure already. Some of you haven't. Now, I'm not saying that you all have to rush out and get a legal structure. There's an appropriate time and place to get that. But certainly I would think about the governance of your organisation before, you know, who have you got around you that can help you get to where you need to go, and find some, you know, people, like-minded people, or people that with the maybe the strengths that you've recognised as a bit of a weakness in your own capacity. You know, who do you need around you? And you know, you really need to start to think about, if you're going to be going down the commissioning or even some grants, you do need some kind of legal structure in place, and that can be unincorporated or it can be incorporated. And I know that we've got a session on that as well, for us to explore some of those legal structures. And I think Michaela's already taken us through that. But there's a legal structure, but there's also things that you might need in place on top of that, which is around, you know, some accountancy support, some bookkeeping, or some insurances that allow you to do your activity safely and in a compliant way. So, for example, to offer services that means giving advice, whether that's business advice or accountancy advice, you need insurance, professional identity insurance to do that type of work. And then if you're doing things, you know, activities within a public place or in your own workspace, then, you know, you need to think about public liability insurance. And there's certain thresholds of kind of when people commission you, or you get a grant, they might want to see copies of insurance documents, or at least know that you've got the right insurance in place. So next one, please. Michaela. Thank you. So we've talked about, Michaela's fully fleshed this one out in the previous session, but yeah, the funding for your business. It's important to know whether you've got some kind of funding already. It might be that, you know, you may have some personal funds to put into it, or you know, you've got enough headroom to just run it without taking a wage for a certain amount of time. I would seriously do your own personal finance assessment first, to understand when you need to start earning, and yeah, when, how much, and by when. So look at what, you know, is the minimum amount of money that you can be bringing in a month that will keep you sustainable, and how much, you know, you need going forward, like maybe later on, because it's that's the stressful bit. If you kind of set up and you've not really thought about how other things are going to be covered, and for how long you can go without taking a wage from your business, or some income from it, then, you know, it can get you into some pretty difficult times. So yeah, like Nicola said, there's lots of different ways of getting funding in, which require different levels of well, whether they need legal structures or they need a particular constitution, unincorporated or whatever, that, you know, no one just gives you money for free. Although, you know, fundraising can be an option early doors, and crowdfunding as well. We did crowdfunding, not for our own organisation, for Flourish, but we did crowdfunding to raise cash investment for our network. And it's a lot of hard work, as Nicola will tell you. But, you know, some people do that, particularly I think people around a building, for example. If you were setting up a building where activity is going to happen, there was quite a successful one in Stockport recently, which was like a makers cooperative, a collective of people making stuff from recycled plastic, and there was quite a few people that invested in that crowdfund to get basically refurb that unit and get it up to scratch. So there are ways and means of doing crowdfunding, but it is quite a hefty task. Yeah, so what are your funding and investment options? What do you need to start up? What do you need to keep it going? Is there a little lag period? Is there a period where you're going to be basically paying out cash, but you're not going to necessarily have all your customers in place? So how long does that last, and what does that mean in terms of your finances? So do you need a grant for that period, or, you know, what is it that you need to get you through that beginning bit before you start converting kind of some of your business development or marketing into actual fully paid customers? So that's probably, I won't go too far into depth on that one because Nicola's covered a lot of the funding bit, but those are just some tips. I think another thing is around thinking about how you run your enterprise. So obviously this has been impacted quite significantly with the pandemic, but, you know, are you going to run it from home? Are you going to go to a co-working space? Are you going to look for your own premises? And I think obviously things to consider around working from home is that, are you able to do that? Is it safe to do so? Everyone is at the moment, whether we like it or not. So there we go. Or would you, and think about you yourself, you know, in which environments do you thrive? You know, is it that, given the chance, ideal world, would you be better around people? If so, then there's quite cheap options if you wanted to enter a co-working space, because they tend to be a lot cheaper than taking on your own office. They tend to have lots of people around with different skills and experience. They tend to also have easy in and out, so you don't have to sign a contract, say, for 12 months. You can just buy time when you want it. Or are you really thinking about getting your own premises? Is that something that you really think would add value to your business, and is it really necessary? Because is it that you could just, you know, rent space off somebody else? I think, you know, there's just so many different options, but I think at the moment we're kind of we're stuck at home. But when it comes to it, you know, what is it that we can do? Where is it that we'll thrive, and where is it that our customers will be happy to come to? I think if you were looking at for a physical location, then you really need to look at the price and be clear on the price and make sure it's fully transparent, that it's not just about the rent, it's about other things like potentially business rates, service charges, if you're going to make any alterations to the building, sometimes you ask to put it right before if you were ever to leave, so there's a cost attached to that. What's the visibility of that space? Will people easily find you? Is there access to parking or public transport? Is it compliant in terms of disability access? And yeah, there's a number of things to consider when looking at a physical space. I think in terms of an online space, a service that you may provide online is just making sure that that your platform is accessible, that it's something that does sell you, it's easy to navigate. Is it that can you afford to kind of work with maybe get some Google ads or move your website up the rankings and things like that. It just depends whether you've got the budget and the for that as well. If you're reliant on online, then it really does need to be good. It needs to be really accessible and quite intuitive, that people can easily find you, they can get what they want from it, and not all websites do that, and they can be quite expensive to invest in as well. So you can use other things, like a lot of you are very good at doing that, they kind of using Facebook as a way to reach customers, Twitter for example. But if you've got a business that really is trying to tap into those that are kind of not digitally enabled, then think about how you're going to do that. There is a massive issue at the moment with the digital divide, and there's some people that just simply won't have access to a tablet or a smartphone, so you just need to think about that, how you're going to reach them. There is a massive drive at the moment to get people access to devices and things, but it's whether they're digitally able to as well. And also data. There's a lot of people struggling with data at the moment because everyone's at home, and data's there's a data poverty issue. So just need to really think about some of these things that would impact on your ability to deliver what you want to deliver. Oh, don't know what's gone there. Hello?
Hiya, we can hear you.
Oh, right, you can. Right.
I know you can feel like you're chatting away to yourself, can't you?
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering where the slideshow have gone.
We can still see the slideshow.
Oh, right, I can't. My computer's being silly.
So I've moved it along to the quick exercise, that 5-minute morning routine.
Oh no, that's from the last session, so that's fine. Just wondered if there was any questions at this point around any of that. How's everyone feeling in terms of the stage that they're at in the enterprise development? And is there any kind of major challenges that anyone's got?
I think the morning sessions definitely got me thinking more about things like, see, I used to work for like a community accountancy service who was actually funded to help charities and volunteer organisations, and I wonder if that's something I might, it's a way I haven't even thought about up till now. So it's something maybe to take into consideration. So that's when Nicola was talking about the income generation and stuff.
Yeah, it's that reaching your customers, isn't it, through other means?
Yeah, and also them knowing about me. So it's I mean, I've already spoken to Nicola, as I say, about getting in touch with CVSs and stuff, but potentially there's other.
It's how much, it's the level of control. It's trying to predict and control and create and giving yourself as much opportunity and also not overwhelming yourself. So there are some people who know They just want to be a freelancer that does social good, and that's the way they're going to operate. And so you go all out, making sure that you build your network and build your potential referral pathways in such a way that that's who you are, that's how you act, and other people will write you into their bids so that you don't have to go to the lengths of setting up your own.
Well, I know there's a couple of my clients have written me into their bids. But
yeah, but so that's one way. But
Yeah.
if that's not working, or you've not got that level of relationship with people yet, or
I'm just worried as well that there is just some that just don't, you know, maybe they actually don't have enough income yet, but they're still still confused by the accounts, etc. How would I reach them? Because they can't necessarily afford me.
that's
Even
it.
though I'm a lot cheaper than other accountants, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and between either talking to the different CVSs and other organisations saying, look, I could run these sessions, I've got this audience, we've got these 10 or 15 people, they need my help, but they can't afford to pay for this thing. I can deliver you skills development outcomes, I can deliver you capacity building outcomes.
Yeah, which is what we need to get. I guess we need to go into that in more detail in our one-to-one.
That's one way. That would be my first port of call.
Yeah.
But then alternatively, there'll be other people here who've gone down that route and it's not quite worked out the way they want, or the current climate, people aren't taking on new partners or whatever, or they're working on certain projects that what you're wanting to offer doesn't fit with what they want to do, in which case setting up a Northwest number, a Friends of Northwest Numbers, or some other unincorporated association attached to Northwest Numbers that can help deliver community projects and initiatives, rather than you having to set up another company, or rather you having to convert Northwest Numbers. There's 3 or 4 routes to trying to achieve what you want to do there, Morag. So we can.
Yeah, as I say, it's probably more depth for our one-to-one rather than here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely started me thinking is what I'm saying.
The point's a good one, because there'll be other people here. I know Jill was talking before about being a little bit, you know, there's this project, there's a few things going on, and there's a couple of vehicles there that she's linked to in order to apply for funding for certain things. So she's in a position where she could do that. But you know, it's are the connections or the not-for-profit vehicles to achieve social good and work with people that can't afford it the right vehicles for what you're applying for or trying to do? And so think just, you know, you can assess, you know, have I got the relationships with the right people to do this? Do I physically need to set something up myself or not? And are there, like you know, are there funders that will fund just me? And how might I approach them to test and pilot this thing? So Unlimited, School for Social Entrepreneurs, Paul Hamlin Ideas for Pioneers are probably 3 of the funds that will fund an individual. There aren't many others. But then beyond that, who else or what else might you want to develop in order to do things differently? So like Anna, who we spoke to before, she's got a constitution there. Alice, that we spoke to as well. Others have gone to the points of setting up a CIC. So everybody's.
Well, I've got a limited company. I have got a legal structure. I'm not an individual.
It's a private company, isn't it?
But it is a private company, and that
makes you ineligible for funding, which is fine in its own way. But there's relationships to create, or new ways of doing things to think about reaching those harder to reach groups that you're trying to work with.
I was just thinking, Morag, and I don't know, I might be completely explicit, but I was just thinking about, you know, some of the small businesses. I was just thinking, say for me, I wouldn't think, right, well, I can allocate £500 or however much it might cost to do my accounts, because I've got some skills in that area myself, but I probably would consider paying, you know, for an hour of your time, say £40 an hour, or, you know, if you did an online kind of, you know, workshop, or not workshop, but kind of troubleshooting kind of online thing where maybe a few could pay. I don't know.
I've tried offering even just normal free Q&A sessions, and nobody seems to be that interested.
So, but then again, so maybe it's your marketing strategy then,
or just timing, isn't it, as well?
And it could be timing,
yeah.
But by doing a little bit of the great thing about our program here as well is that, you know, whether it's this program or other programs that we're running, we've got little groups of people who can act as a mini focus group to one another, or can act as a mini, can fill in a survey to say, I'd do this, this or this. So whilst we've got these coming months of support with one another, we could, there might be certain people running businesses who need to do a bit of research right now, and there might be people in the group here who are target market, if you will, as individuals, or as women, or as mothers, or as people interested in health and well-being, or as other ventures that might need certain things. So, I'm not, I can't speak for everybody and saying, oh yes, they've got the hours and the day to fill in surveys for everybody, but we can share links to help you gather the data that you need, or help you think through how to put those short survey type things together if you just need a little bit more understanding from your customer audience. And one thing Joe was saying before, I know we're going to break for lunch shortly, was around competitor analysis. And I think that's a huge underdeveloped task in most organizations. People don't spend enough time doing it. They think they only have to do it for a business plan, or they think they only have to do it at the beginning. But competitor analysis is a constant ongoing thing. And I would say I do a competitor analysis, or support people to do competitor analysis in quite an in-depth way, as one of our paid services, because it creates such useful information. And often people just do a quick look, or they just have a quick think, or they just pull out their head who they think they know are competitors. And usually that's often quite wrong or under considered. And so when we help people look at competitor analysis, it really helps you look at who you'd already thought of, who you'd not thought of, and other competitors that you wouldn't even consider to be your competitors, but they are. Basically, your competitors are anyone that your target market is spending their money on in different, that they're much broader than just who's like you or who offers something similar to you. If people are spending money on health and well-being, they're spending it on a very broad range of stuff. If people are spending money on activities for their kids, be they educational or otherwise, it's a broad spectrum. And the other thing that people forget to do in competitor analysis, you can pick names out of the ether, or out of your networks, or out of what you're aware of, but people forget to kind of really analyze them against what you do. So if you think about what are your 5 or 6 or 3 or 4 core products and services that you offer, what are your values and mission, and you compare your competitors against all of those, you can really then start to see who is quite like you and who's quite different to you. And probably getting a bit technical there, but it's just a point that, if you're going to go to the lengths of looking at who's your competitors, do consider it in the really broadest sense, and do pick Joe and mine's brains on this, because we'll know who a lot of your competitors are and who you perhaps hadn't considered as competitors, and we might be able to help you think on how you might analyze a little bit deeper what your USP is compared to these competitors, so that it helps you with your marketing, it helps you with you pitching how you stand out against your competition, and it might actually help you see how your competitors are doing certain things better or in improved ways, so that you can learn from. So that's my.
Is that something we'd have to book a separate section for you to help us with?
No,
or
we can chat that through as part of one-to-ones where people need that. We can chat that through, and
yeah,
I may even run a mini workshop on it, thinking about it, because it's quite it's not a difficult thing for me to pull together and show you how we go about this. It's not rocket science. It's just hours in the day for people sometimes, or having that broad awareness of what's out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe.
I think the marketing as well. It's sometimes we try something. Yeah, we try something and it doesn't work, so we just move on. It might be, like you say, there might be factors as to why it didn't work at that moment in time, but perhaps scheduling in different times at which to deliver something, and just see if one works better than the other.
If it's a time, or if it's a platform or whatever. Yeah,
and then maybe and even if you did run it and it wasn't successful, it might be that you just need to build up your your kind of your followers around that. So it could be that it might not work at one point, but later on down the line it starts picking up. but consistency is quite key with marketing, because if you think about, you know, the things that we buy, they're quite consistently pushed at us, aren't they? You know, I know certainly before Christmas, you know, I was just getting loads of, like, you know, I maybe Googled something and then next minute I was getting loads of sponsored ads for stuff. And it was quite consistent. And then I was like, oh yeah, I should really consider getting that. Or, you know, I will buy that from my mum. You know, and it's quite consistent. And I think that's what's key with your marketing. If you suddenly appear and you're like really trying to drive traffic to a certain event, and then you feel it doesn't work, then you just disappear for a couple of months. I'm not saying that you're doing that, but these are some of the mistakes that other people make. You know, it's just, even if you're not running something, it's just a message. And I know you're really good at that because I see you very often on Facebook. So yeah, that were just some points I wanted to make on the previous point around marketing and why things might not work at a point in time.
Yeah, it's just I'm trying something different just now. So I suppose I'm just feeling that little bit more. Part of it is about, you know, when I'm talking about my marketing and stuff, I'm just feeling a little bit nervous about that side of it. But yeah, as I said, the point was that I've started thinking about other things, and I'll go into it more with Michaela, because she's my coach.
Any more questions before we break for lunch?
Okie dokie. Fab. Well, thanks for sticking with it so far this morning, and everyone's got their own sort of challenges around the edges trying to just even be here this morning, but hopefully some of that has been useful information. The workshops will be there as listen again sessions for you if you need to recap on certain things, and all the other sessions that we've got, we have got listen again options for that I will resend after the sessions today for people to pick up on. They're all in our based in our sort of YouTube channel. So I will I think we're going to have half an hour break, so if we perhaps meet back just before 1. We've got a session with Morag around you know, budgeting, cash flow, finances, that sort of thing, to for both the basics and, you know, thinking through what you need, tools and ideas to help you get the best things in place there. So yeah, grab what you need, and we'll catch up with you during the next session.